This episode was pre-recorded as part of a live continuing education webinar. On-demand CEUs are still available for this presentation through All CEUs. Register at allceus.com/counselor toolbox. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's presentation, Addiction and Co-occurring Disorders, Part 2, the Physiology of Addiction and Mental Health Issues. Over the next hour, we're going to discuss, somewhat generally, because there's a lot of stuff to go over, neurotransmitters, which we've talked about some before. But then we're also going to talk a little bit more today than we've talked in the past about sex hormones, thyroid hormones, and stress hormones, and how all of those interact in the body to increase or decrease the availability of certain neurotransmitters. We're going to go on from learning about the different hormones and neurotransmitters to discussing the physiology of emotion and motivation. And again, we've kind of covered that, but we're going to go over it real quick again. We'll talk about the physiology of sleep, what happens during sleep, and what happens to those hormones and neurotransmitters when you don't get enough sleep. What happens when you eat? Why is eating sometimes rewarding? What happens when people take stimulants, whether it's caffeine or methamphetamine? What happens when we turn up the system, and how does that affect the availability of certain neurotransmitters? And then we'll talk about the physiology of depressants. So we're looking in general at what these things do. As far as the physiology of addiction, we're going to talk generally about that right at the very end. So your inhibitory neurotransmitters are those brain chemicals that basically turn down the system. So instead of being hyped up and awake and yada yada, you're calm, you are relaxed, you are maybe even sleepy to drowsy. So your inhibitory neurotransmitters obviously are the ones that kick in or counteract the excitatory ones. Serotonin is your primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's broken down to make melatonin and help you sleep. Okay, so we know that one. It's also responsible for a lot of our bowel function, anxiety, and also it's implicated in nausea and motion sickness. And they found that there are a lot fewer side effects to serotonin antagonists than there are to dopamine antagonists when we're talking about helping people who have motion